So far we have discussed the democratic, the pragmatic, and the public schools of open science. They all focus on different ways to be open and different reasons to be open. But if there's one big requirement for scientists to be motivated to go open and to remain open, is in being valued for this type of work. And that relates to the measurement school, which states that if we are not able to value openness and its impact, why would scientists strive to be open? You see, we're more than aware of the limitations of traditional metrics in research evaluation processes, and those limitations are quite easy to grasp. For one, indicators are inherently imperfect. From the moment we are not able to assess the real thing and we use indicators as an intermediary element to help us see reality, we lose something. So we may try to improve indicators, but there's always going to be something lost in translation. Besides that, most indicators in research evaluation are focused on bibliometrics and centrometrics, and those alternative publishing formats that we discussed in the public school are usually not covered. A naive solution could be to adopt peer review for everything, but that's very time consuming, even if we take a portfolio type of approach. Finally, impact and responsibility measures are very flawed. One that I particularly hate has everything to do with open science, and you see that indicator around in many places. I'm talking about institutions being asked, oh, do you have an open science policy in place? If the answer is yes, this is a good sign, or at least was supposed to be. Because if my policy is that I just don't care about open science, it is a policy. So the question here does not measure the quality or the commitment of the policy. So what's the solution? Well, I'll come back to the Brazilian example mentioned in the public school, where the 49 evaluation areas in the country decided to value 21 different types of products other than papers, books, or other inwards-oriented products. Looking into the documents where each one of the areas delineates their evaluation criteria, this is what I found. 2 areas said they would value such products lower than they do papers. You can imagine not many scientists would be motivated to produce them. 24 areas, nearly half, are not yet clear on how much value they will place on alternative research outputs, but 15 already inform they will be as valuable as papers, and 8 say they might put even more value on those types of products, considering, of course, level of complexity and other particular elements of each type of product. For instance, cultivars, patents, and processes can be much more complex and time-consuming to develop than a paper. So why shouldn't a research earn corresponding points for example, when they're going for a promotion or applying for a grant? But what we see with this experience is an example of the type of action taking place everywhere. And that is all about trying to find new ways to value science that is open, that's diversified. And that's much more complex than what we traditionally see in evaluations. So that leaves us with a lingering question, that is, how to go beyond perfecting what's there. Instead of just trying to find better impact factors or alternatives to the H-index or citation scores, how can we expand possibilities? Well, we can think of some solutions, actually some ideas to explore. For example, we can talk about altmetrics and webometrics, which are complementary measures of attention and impact. So we can, for instance, measure readership from citation managers such as Mendeley, or we can measure attention given to research on social media such as Twitter, or we can look into who's accessing your blog posts. Another option comes from the narrative CVs, which are all about moving from counting outputs to sharing their untold story. So narrative CVs are less about how much you have done, but why you've done it, or how you've done it, or what sort of impact came from that. I know NWO has been adopting narrative CVs strongly in their evaluation process, but it's also worthy to mention the Dutch Strategy Evaluation Protocol that's used to assess the research units in the country. And that's done through a self-evaluation process, very much like an institutional narrative CV. Your self-assessment report tells readers who you are, what you've done, you convey your values and accomplishments, and you support that with the necessary evidence that's custom-made, custom-selected for each different situation. And finally, we can mention the Initiative for Open Citations, which is moving from black box metrics to exploring connections. That's interesting because if evaluators have easy access to who's citing whom, much beyond the closed, limited data sets that we usually find, it becomes easier to find connections, networks that sometimes tell a much more meaningful story than what a calculation could ever do. And to close that, we once again look at some interesting examples. For instance, we see both NWO and RCN have signed the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, DORA, and those principles are being implemented in both countries. While NWO is part of the National Recognition and Rewards Program in the Netherlands, RCN has signed the EU Reforming Research Assessment Initiative, but has also been involved in producing the report On the Way Forward, which I highly recommend. Finally, both agencies are involved in the Initiative for Open Abstracts, which our very own Ludo Voltman from CWTS coordinates. And with that, we conclude this initial overview of the Measurement School of Open Science, but highlighting we will come back to the ideas of rewards and recognition and responsible research evaluation in the fourth seminar of the series. But for now, let's move on to the final school of the day, the Infrastructure School.